Let's move into our next session then. As I said, we'll have a session hearing from several of our colleagues in national policing organizations. We have a representative from the Police Executive Research Forum here. We have a representative from the National Policing Institute, both of whom have done substantial work over the years. Body-worn cameras, the impact of cameras on the field, the impact of cameras on our communities, the impact of policy. So I am very thankful that we have both Martin Bartness from PERF and Colby Dolly from NPI here with us today. Let me just thank you both at this moment for responding to our request to join us and for being here today. I'll run this kind of in a panel way with some questions and answers. I have some questions I'm going to offer to our guests and hear from each of them on each of these. I will use my discretion whether I want to maybe probe certain things or move on to the next topic, and I will give them ample opportunity to talk about these issues from their perspectives. Let's just first begin. I think I didn't formally introduce myself earlier, so I'm Chip. I'm a co-director at the CNA Center for Justice Research and Innovation. I've been a director or advisor on this body-worn camera technical assistance program since its inception. I've worked with many of you. I've had the pleasure of watching progress and developments across the country. So I think it's nice to have this opportunity, and it's important to step back a little bit and look at a broader perspective on how other people are viewing body-worn cameras. And again, as I said, their impact on us, on our communities, on our profession, etc. Let's start with you. Can you just take a minute and introduce yourself and PERF's work in this area briefly, and then Colby will go to you.
You bet. Thank you, Chip. My name, again, is Martin Bartness. I work for the Police Executive Research Forum, or PERF as it's better known, in Washington, D.C. I joined PERF in May of last year after a 25-year career with the Baltimore Police Department, where I retired as the Deputy Chief of Patrol. For those who are not particularly familiar with the work of PERF, work is focused in 4 areas, including research, executive searches, and executive training through the Senior Management Institute for Police, which is hosted in Boston every summer. I work in the 4th area, which is PERF's Center for Management and Technical Assistance, where I have the privilege of working with law enforcement agencies across the country on some of their most pressing issues of the day, topics such as use of force, crisis response, de-escalation, recruitment and retention, organizational culture, and other topics of the like. One of my most recent projects has been on police body-worn cameras. In 2013, really kind of at the forefront of when law enforcement agencies began implementing body cameras on a large scale, PERF convened a national conference of more than 200 police chiefs, sheriffs, and other experts for an in-depth discussion of the many complex issues body cameras raised. And at that conference, participants shared their experiences with body cameras, their concerns with what this technology meant for the future of policing, and their questions about how to deploy body cameras in a way that strengthens police transparency and accountability without infringing on people's privacy or damaging community policing efforts. We used those discussions as the basis for a publication in 2014, published in partnership with the COPS Office. The report entitled Implementing a Body-Worn Camera Program, Recommendations and Lessons Learned, provided the first set of comprehensive guidelines for implementing a body camera program. And then in June of this year, PERF hosted another national conference of roughly 200 police leaders, researchers, and other experts to talk about their experiences with body-worn cameras over the past 10 years. Notably, at that conference, many federal law enforcement agencies, which had previously not been at the table, attended the conference as they too are now adopting body camera programs. These discussions revealed both the benefits and challenges of body cameras and how this technology is being used in innovative ways to shape our profession. Later this year, we will publish a supplement to our 2014 report, and it will be entitled Body-Worn Cameras a Decade Later, What We Know Now. Thank you, Chip.
Thank you very much, Martin. And Colby, please go ahead. Let's have a brief introduction from you.
Thanks for having me. I'm Colby Dolly. I'm a director with the National Policing Institute. Prior to coming to the Institute, I served 21 years for the St. Louis County, Missouri Police Department. I was a lieutenant there, did many things there from patrol all the way to actually writing the policy for our body cam use and implementing the program. So as I said, I work for the National Policing Institute. A little bit about us. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan, non-membership research firm. We've been in existence since 1970. There's quite a few seminal studies in the field of policing that were originated with the National Policing Institute, then known as the Police Foundation. More recently, we've done a lot of work in the area of technology implementation. We're currently working on a project which I can describe more later during the panel discussion. It's funded through the National Institute of Justice, which is to evaluate a different way, really an automated way of evaluating body-worn camera footage. And again, I'll discuss that more during the panel, but I'm certainly glad to be here. Looking forward to the discussion.
Wonderful. Again, thank you both. I'm going to launch into our questions now and make a quick thanks to Margarita for posting that note in the chat. As we go through these questions, if you have questions yourself or comments you want to make, just feel free to put them in the chat and we'll get to as many of them as we can as we close the session out. But can somebody put the next slide up for me? Okay, so it seems to me the purpose and utility of body-worn cameras has changed over time. From your experience, do you think agencies use body-worn cameras chiefly as a means of evidence collection for efficiency or more as a means to improve police behavior? And Martin, I'm going to ask you to start us off on this discussion topic.
Very good. Thank you, Chip. Well, I like to think of it this way. It's important for us to reflect on the why behind body cameras, and they became such an important piece of technology for the purpose of building trust and credibility and transparency and accountability between law enforcement and the public. Of course, we wanted to see reduced incidents of force, fewer citizen injuries, fewer police injuries, etc. But the focus has always been to kind of take a look behind the curtain and not just rely on what police are telling the public, usually through the media. I think they've largely served that purpose. In terms of how police departments chiefly use them, I think they use them for a variety of purposes across the board, and they're equally valuable, from presenting evidence in court, capturing victim and statement testimonies, states of mind at the time of an incident, bringing the scene to life for those who were not there, helps officers write their incident reports, tell the story to prosecutors and jurors, lends a lot of authenticity and credibility to what police officers are doing in the field. And I also think we're now seeing more than ever, of course, police departments using body-worn camera footage as a training tool and to critique their performance in the field on an ongoing basis. PERF's executive director, Chuck Wexler, calls it Monday morning quarterbacking. And these incidents are an opportunity for agencies to analyze critical incidents or even more routine police incidents and question, policy, procedure, practices, training, resources, and really, drive organizational culture change where it is needed around certain issues. So I think it's an incredibly powerful tool. And from my seat, I think it's very rewarding to see the creativity departments are showing behind this. They're very expensive, and we shouldn't be limiting their use to just the capturing of evidence for prosecution.
Excellent start, Martin, and we will get to your creativity comment in just a minute. Colby, please go ahead and add to this if you'd like. And what's NPI's perspective on this particular question?
Yeah, the thing I would add to it is that the question of, are the cameras chiefly used as a means for evidence collection or to improve police behavior? I think back to, I'm very familiar with the death of Michael Brown in Ferguson in 2014. And if you recall, a lot of the motivations for getting body cameras was to see sort of behind the scenes, as Martin said, that you could see what happened, the actual interaction between the officer and in that case, Michael Brown. So I think that evidence, that's definitely evidence collection, but I think that was then intertwined with accountability, because if you had that evidence collection, then you could have the improved accountability and improved police behavior. Thought on this is that I see the body worn cameras really as a means to improve police behavior. I agree with a lot of stuff that Martin was saying. I just don't think that at this point, because really, if you big picture, body cams are a fairly new technology. They haven't been around that long, and this technology is getting better and better all the time. And I can discuss this a little bit later, but I think that you will see where the body cam technology can be used to shape that behavior and really drill down on what are the key elements and sort of behaviors of officers that drive good outcomes in the community.
I want to just make a quick note here that we fully recognize that body cameras are making their ways into much more than policing. They're solidly in correctional facilities now, and they've made their way into other justice agencies and parks and recreation and, code enforcement and all kinds of things. So I don't want to suggest that this is strictly a policing matter. And again, I would encourage participants in our audience to chime in from their perspectives if they. Thank you both for those opening thoughts and comments. Martin, you suggested that there's something to be said about the creative use of cameras, and so that's where I want to go to next. If we can get that next question up. Colby, we'll start with you. Are you aware of creative uses of body-worn cameras in the field? I personally kind of marvel at the ingenuity of our officers, our line officers. Are there emerging practices or innovations that you have observed and taken notice of?
Well, I'm going to talk about the one project that we're involved in through the National Institute of Justice. And so let me start out by saying that you have a lot of body cam footage being captured every day across the United States. And Chip, to your point, it's not just policing, it's in corrections, it's in all these justice oriented organizations. So we have all this body cam footage being collected. Every day officers are going out there, moving it to servers, getting it stored away. The problem is you can't actually, it's not always actionable because there's so much of it. It's just the volume of it is so immense that it's then hard to actually do something meaningful with all that data. So in this project, we have partners, Polis Solutions, University of North Texas at Dallas, and the Dallas Police Department. Polis Solutions has created a machine learning algorithm on the back end of a server, or however you set that up, to go through this body cam footage automated. So no human is actually having to do a lot of work to get this going. And what it will do is, in the ultimate form of it, it will flag videos that could be problematic. And that's, that could be triggered by different things, but it can flag those videos that are problematic. It can score procedural justice on these videos. It in the end, it can do a lot of things. So I really think that this is where you're going to see a lot of the value being gained from body cameras, because if we think back to, well, if we want them for accountability, I agree with that, but how do you actually then do that when a lot of this body cam footage never gets viewed unless there's like a complaint, a use of force, something notable that brings it to the attention of supervisors or others? So I just want to make something clear though with this project is that, there's a lot of scrutiny over machine learning algorithms or AI, and some of that is definitely warranted. We should definitely be very intentional about how we use technology. But in this case, we're not saying that the AI or the algorithm is making the decisions for the humans. It's simply helping us do the work to say, out of all these videos, hours and hours of videos from every officer every day, here are the ones that you may want to look at. And from that point, there is a human decision-making process with a review. But I do think that this is where the field's going to go with these body cams to really get the value from them.
Thank you very much. And Martin, please go ahead and join in. Let's hear what PERF has to say about this.
Yes, sir. I'll piggyback a little bit on AI and then mention a couple of other things that we've seen agencies doing across the country. So, at our conference at the end of June, LAPD was present and spoke of a partnership they have with the University of Southern California to use machine learning to analyze 31,000 traffic stops, not with the view toward identifying misconduct or undesirable behavior in police officers and for disciplinary reasons, but to, in the aggregate, determine what leads to good and bad outcomes during vehicle stops, from body positioning to tone of voice to time of day to suspect behavior. And, from that analysis, use it to drive training, promote, if merited, the tenets of procedural justice, and really bring some credibility to some of these principles that have been talked about for a number of years that perhaps for some have not seen very tangible, but and to bring that tangibility to the issues. The other positive that potentially can come out of this is it's going to give law enforcement the opportunity to tell the story. And looking at that massive amount of data, what's going well and how frequently is it going well, and how often perhaps are undesirable outcomes being realized, and telling that story to the public. And I think what we're going to find is what we intuitively believe, and that is, by and large, police officers are doing their jobs the right way, and that is according to policy and procedure, and they're out there serving the public well. But this is a great opportunity, and body-worn, it's great to see body-worn cameras being used in this way, and agencies like LAPD partnering with USC to do the research. A couple of other things I do want to mention are that I think speak to the state of the profession and how seriously the interactions at the ground level are being taken, and that is things like ongoing auditing practices, random supervisory audits or audits through internal affairs or inspections units. In some cases, like the state of Minnesota, for example, there's a statute that requires them to have an external audit every 2 years of their body-worn cameras to ensure that incidents are being cataloged and tagged and titled appropriately. And this has, the potential to ensure that personnel are following organizational policy, where goals are not being met, to hold people accountable for those things, and not necessarily in a punitive way. We heard stories of where an agency saw its greatest improvement with camera activation, not from having to come behind through these audits and give people letters of reprimand or loss of leave and things of that nature, but in real time through daily emails, for example, to all of the officers in the agencies. Look, yesterday you activated your body-worn camera X number of times. These are the number of calls for service that you responded to. These 2 incidents, you activated the camera late. And so it was a constant reminder and reinforcement of what the expectations are. And within a couple of months, they went from a compliance rate in the 60th percentile to the 90th percentile.
Great. I have a couple thoughts at this juncture. Number one, you both are not only responding to my questions very thoughtfully, but you're tipping us off to issues that we're going to talk about over the next few days. So this is actually working the way I thought it would work. Imagine that. Really nice. I want to thank those participants who are actively engaging in the chat. I can already see some things coming through. I want to just suggest at this juncture, if anybody out there has other creative ways that they have seen cameras being used, please feel free to, let us know about that in the chat, and we'll go on to the next question. Martin, I'm going to come back to you. It's a slightly different question. It's about policy, and I want to ask if there are aspects of body-worn camera policy. What comes to mind for me are things like activation, release of footage to the public, officer review of footage after critical incidents, or other policy topics. Are these changing over time? Do you see them changing, and do you see maybe a little bit into the future on where things might be going policy-wise? So Martin, have at it for a few minutes, and we'll go back to Colby.
Thanks, Chip. You hit the 3 big issues right on the head. Those are the 3 that were of greatest interest to our most recent attendees at the conference. They're the issues they're wrestling with the most. Activation is a huge one, of course. I'm reminded of just last week, We had an officer involved shooting in Syracuse involving a deputy sheriff where the camera wasn't activated. And, there's certainly nothing more frustrating to the community to have made this kind of investment and then a camera not be turned on in the critical incident to, be transparent and to show the public what exactly happened. And it really, really jeopardizes community trust when that doesn't happen. And so what we have found, Chip, is that those agencies with body camera programs that do not have very explicit activation and deactivation policies are the ones that are most likely to have an episode like that, where a member does not turn on a camera. And you've got to be, as an agency, just very, very deliberate, and you've got to be unwavering in the expectation that the camera gets turned on at the time of the call for service. And you'll see a little bit of a continuum in policy. Some will say do it right at the moment the officer gets the call for service. Some will say upon arrival. I'm an advocate of, PERF's an advocate of turning it on immediately, especially if you're going lights and sirens, you want those cameras on anyway. And this, eliminates the officer arriving on the scene to chaos, and heaven knows what they're immediately encountering and getting tunnel vision, etc. Turn the camera on right away. We're also big advocates of technology advances in helping the officer in these situations and not having to rely on muscle memory, if you will, to activate it, but to use technologies such as sidearm activation, taser activation, lights and sirens turning on the camera, the use of biometrics to turn it on, or in some cases, even CAD activation. So those tools are very, very helpful to achieve the compliance that we're all seeking. You mentioned, Chip, public release of body-worn cameras. We did a review of over 100 BWC policies before our conference. What we still find is a very low percentage, in this case, only 14% of the policies reviewed explicitly state when body-worn cameras footage should be released pursuant to a critical incident. And it sets departments up for trouble when these critical incidents do occur and there is public outcry for timely release and disclosure for what is occurring. So we need to learn from each other. We need to learn from agencies who have experienced doing things perhaps not the best way, and begin thinking now, if you aren't already doing so, about when that incident happens, and rest assured it's going to happen to your agency, to be ahead of the curve and know how you're going to respond and have a very clear policy to fall back on to justify your actions.
Thank you, sir. And Colby, you want to join in?
Yeah, I think as far as things that are going to change over time, I actually, my department was a sort of a late comer to the party for body-worn cameras. That did offer some advantages, though, I will say, as far as things have already been worked out and you can see sort of the good and the bad of other implementations. But the one thing I think that's going to change based out of some of those experiences is that the public is going to come to consensus on some of these issues of sort of the acceptance of when a body cam should be on or not on. And this also goes, I think, releasing the videos. And this is, the technology, this is in many things, technology jumps out and can do all these great things. And then it sort of takes society a little while to like figure out like what they're comfortable with that. And the example I'll give you is, and it came as a surprise to me that a lot of community advocates didn't want a lot of victims being recorded. They wanted to minimize that as much as possible. So from the outset, you may think, well, we want the officers to have their body cams on all the time. But come to find out, it's a little bit more nuanced than that perhaps we don't want them to record every single interaction with the public because of folks in vulnerable positions, or they're just in a vulnerable state. And maybe that's not what people want. So the takeaway from this, I think, is that you need to find out what those expectations are in your community and really use those, at least in part, to guide your policy. Sort of related to this, I think we're getting to the point where, I mean, I asked the question, is the point of body-worn cameras to have just sort of 24/7 surveillance on the officer in every single thing they do? or is it for that accountability? And where that really sort of comes together with policy is to say, well, do you need them to turn the camera on for every single interaction with a citizen, even friendly, sort of just talking to folks out watering their grass? Does it have to be on for that? Because I think that's where we have to find this balance for the community and the officers as well. Thanks, Chip.
All right, listen, very, very thoughtful responses to all this. We're going to move to the final question. I want to just suggest that we have a kind of pointed responses to this next question. We're back to you, Martin. This is about implementation issues. Maybe this is a redundant question, but what have you observed in the field? And what lessons do you think agencies should take heed of as they continue to implement their body camera programs?
Let me share this with you. As I thought about that question in preparation for our panel, I thought about something Nancy Levine, who's the director of the NIJ, a comment that she made at our conference, and I think it really hits the nail on the head. So I do want to share it with the group. She said, so much of whether a body-worn camera program is successful rests on policy and implementation, or what we call in the research world implementation fidelity. This is one reason why we see so much variation in the studies about whether body cameras are effective. In the places where they aren't, maybe the agency hasn't developed clear policies or hasn't made sure that those policies are being implemented as intended. Technologies like body-worn cameras aren't like a light that you can just switch on and then all of a sudden you've got the desired outcome. There is so much nuance involved in the implementation. I couldn't, I just couldn't agree with this more. It really, one great thing that we saw at our meeting, and we saw this at our PERF annual meeting a month later as well, is there's not an attendee who has already implemented a body-worn camera program who would volunteer to give it up. They desperately want them at the executive level and the rank and file level. This is a great piece of technology. It's good for the profession. And so with that understanding, we have, whether it's management or labor, we have something that can bring us together. That is an anchor. And while there may be at times some disputes as to policy measures that are going to be taken, such as, for example, permitting officers to view body-worn camera footage prior to giving a statement in a critical incident. At the end of the day, we do all have agreement that this is a valuable tool for us, and we can find and negotiate creative ways of meeting our goals. And one of those creative ways in looking at policy that has really kind of started to come to the fore around this issue of body-worn camera footage and when you can view it and give a statement, et cetera, is take a perceptual statement first. Get the statement of what the officers experienced in that moment without looking at the footage. And then taking a brief break, if you will, in the interview, allowing the involved member to view the video, and then reconvening that interview to give the opportunity to clarify that any discrepancies that may exist between that perceptual statement and what they saw in the video. Thanks, Chip.
Another very thoughtful answer to our question, Martin. Thank you. Colby, please go ahead and join in, and then we'll move to some of the questions in the chat.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with what Martin said and the quote by Dr. Levine. I'll phrase it a little bit different way. I think that really what you're talking about here, when we're looking at implementing a huge technology across, a whole agency, really, is you're talking about organizational change management. And when you get into that, you really have to think very carefully about how to set yourself up for success. And part of that is it's going to take a lot of planning. You have to really think through these issues, because most of you on this call are familiar with cops or just criminal justice practitioners. They're going to have a lot of hard questions. They're going to ask all these detailed, nuanced questions. And you have to take the time to think all these things out before you roll this out. If possible, you should always do that. And I think just as important is to have complete buy-in from all supervisors in the department from the sergeant all the way to the chief or CEO, because the officers are going to look to their sergeants, they're going to look to their lieutenants and see what their attitude about it is. And if the sergeant doesn't really care, or the sergeant doesn't think this is such a good idea, well, that's going to have a huge impact on the implementation. So I think those are some things that agencies should take the time and really focus on besides the technical part of it.
Nicely put. I want to just take a quick moment here as we move into these questions from the chat to thank you both again. The response to our invitation to come talk, for the way you prepared for this session, and for the way you responded to our questions. I think that we're spot on. They're certainly indicators of the seriousness with which both of your organizations approach this issue, and with the helpfulness that we've received from you, right, all over the years as these cameras have made their way into the workings of the system. So thank you both very, very much. And now, Brittany, I'm going to lean on you perhaps to take a look at the questions in the chat, and let's see if we can field one or two of them. And I'll just make a commitment to everyone here. If we don't get to every question in the chat, we will find a way to respond to them at the, after the meeting's over, and send some notices out to everybody so we don't leave any stone unturned. But Brittany, what do we have there that we can present to our guests here?
Sure. I will first add that there were a number of questions on where you can find the reports or the work that's been mentioned. We have put those in the chat. So John put some of those in the chat for you to download those reports that were referenced, go to the website. So everything from, PERF, as well as NIJ, as well as MPI, and as well as something that NIJ did with POLIS. So please do look for those. There were other comments on what other agencies are doing, but the one question that I do see, thank you, Martin, for putting in your email address there. One question I do see, Chip, for everybody is from Director Paul Vanderpool, that asked, he says, understood all of this that we're talking about, but how do you address the viewing of tactical techniques in showing sensitive, critical law enforcement movements? There's an element on OPSEC and technique controls.
Obi, can I lean on you first for this, and then maybe turn to Martin? What thoughts do you have about this very important question?
Yeah, I think inevitably, if you amass enough body cam footage, you're going to have some of these investigative or tactical techniques sort of shown on video. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. You need to understand what your state laws are for releasing this information. I only know the experience of my home state, Missouri, and we could close those records because they were giving away investigative techniques or tactical techniques, whatever the case is. I mean, the best advice I can give you is you're probably going to have videos with those things on there, but you need to really have a good relationship with your legal team or whoever that is to make sure that you know how to legally close those from public viewing, is my best advice for you.
Colby, thank you. Martin, what do you have here?
Great points by Colby. I would ensure I'm taking a couple of steps. One, which Colby alluded to, is this is not a unilateral decision with the custodian of records, with the involved law enforcement agency. The office that's going to be prosecuting this has a large stake as well, and needs to have a voice in what is disclosed with the public anyway. The other bit of advice is be creative in balancing the needs. And there is a need to be transparent. There is a need to be accountable. There is a need to get the story out there to, in most cases, make it clear that officers acted according to policy and procedure. And they did everything that they reasonably could to de-escalate and reduce the chances of injury to the public. And then, of course, the obligation when things don't go well to own up to that, to any mistakes that may have been made, and what the agency is going to do to rectify them going forward. What I have found is that, where there is creativity, kind of where there's a will, there's a way. Maybe you can't disclose absolutely every piece of body-worn camera footage because it is tactically sensitive, or because you're going to be exposing a victim's identity, etc. There are certain things that can't be released, and you're forthcoming with that information to the public, and you're providing them a reasonable explanation why, and that explanation is grounded in the policy that already exists about the type of information that should not and cannot be disclosed for whatever reason it may be. And then, I've also seen things somewhat related to that where, maybe just certain members of the media will be shown certain clips and it won't be broadcast widely to the public, but the media can come, they can view it, they can then write their stories about what has occurred and they become representatives of that information.
We are now probably pushing up against a break time. I see one other question. I want to see if we can get a quick response to. I think it's an interesting one and something that we should probably take up with our TA program. But the question's from Anthony Williams. Are there any thoughts on using BWC live streaming capabilities to allow a virtual show up of a suspect across the city? Martin, quick thought about that?
Great question. It is, quite frankly, it's not an issue that I have personally encountered or that we have seen in our research. The reality is these are the kinds of creative applications of the technology that are going on. And I always say any kind of creative use of technology, make sure the stakeholders are at the table, the conversation is being had, and that you're being transparent about the way the decisions are being made around these issues.
Quickly, Colby, anything you want to add there? And
Yeah,
then-
I would just say I would check with the prosecutor on that to see, how, if that's going to be admissible as evidence.
I think that's it, actually, folks. It's been a great session. I want to just say again, tremendously thoughtful responses to the questions that we put to both of you. So thank you for your service. Thank you for your participation.